Hello again, this is Bill Parrish. Today is February 11th, 2008, and what I'd like to talk about in this podcast is the most remarkable economic financial story, probably the most significant in the last 25 years, and I believe it'll also determine the Democratic nominee for president. My work's been featured in front page stories in the New York Times, USA Today, Bloomberg Markets, a variety of other publications. You can see those at my website at www.billparrish.com. Note also there's a blog in the archive. The story I want to talk about today is the one that hasn't been done. It's a remarkable story. To understand it, let's go back to Japan. In the 1980s, the Nikkei was at 40,000. Today it's at 13,000. In the interim, they had a real estate bust, they had a banking problem, and their economy has been stuck for a long time. What happened in Japan, the truth is, they never had a banking crisis, and they never really had a real estate crisis. They had something before that. It was a real simple crisis. It was an accounting crisis over one simple accounting rule. What the Japanese did is they took a lot of expenses and they capitalized them, writing them off, rather than writing them off in their income statement. So they created all these assets, massive assets that had nothing behind them. And then the banks did loans off of those, and in the end, of course, the loans can't be repaid because there was nothing there to begin with. So my point is, Japan had an accounting crisis. And the chairman of the Federal Reserve, Ben Bernanke, and the chair of the SEC, Christopher Cox, and President Bush need to understand we have an accounting crisis also. It has nothing to do with Sarbanes-Oxley and all these counters. It has one simple rule, as simple as the rule in Japan, although a different rule. And here's the rule. Okay. First, let me provide some background. The fastest growing area in the financial services sector right now is hedge funds. And the reason the hedge funds are growing is due to this particular rule. What it is involving net operating losses. So in the 1980s, you could go out and buy companies with losses and offset those losses against your income and pay no tax. So it became very controversial. A loophole was closed. The person who led the closure was Senator Robert Packwood, who was from Oregon, chair of the Senate Finance Committee. Okay, they closed the loophole, saying if you buy a company with losses, you can only deduct roughly 5% a year of those losses. But they never conceded the company with the losses buying the profitable companies, and that's what's happening. Okay, so here's how the game works. You get a bunch of investors together, you form a partnership, and you go out and you buy losses from these .com companies that have massive losses they'll never be able to use. A lot of them are defunct. A lot of the losses they generated for tax purposes weren't even real expenses. They came from stock options in which they just issued stock, created these huge tax deductions that they never really had to recognize as an expense on their income statements. So you create a huge pool of losses, let's say $5 billion. And then you go out and you start buying profitable companies and you roll them in. Well, when they closed the loophole in the 1980s, they never conceived of the company with the losses, the partnership with all the losses, buying the profitable companies. So someone knocks on your door, you're CEO of a company, and they say they're from a hedge fund or a private equity firm, and they say, look, let us buy your company because we can convert you to a tax-exempt entity for 5 to 7 years, and then you can lower your prices, drive your competitors out of the market, and to throw a little bonus in it, you'll be able to exercise your stock options immediately if we take you over, and we'll give you stock options in our new entity, we'll make you a partner, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's the game that's being played. And the sad thing is, Bill Clinton's a big part of it. I have a lot of respect for President Clinton. I think he was a very effective president. But he's made tens of millions of dollars doing hostile takeovers. His partnership he's in of good companies like Wild Oats is a good example. Wild Oats was an excellent, fast-growing organic grocery food company. And Bill Clinton made millions off of that. The partnership did a hostile takeover of them. It's wrong. Chelsea Clinton also works for a hedge fund. Again, I think Hillary Clinton's a very capable person, but that's what's going to determine the Democratic nominee for president. Hillary Clinton's finished. And the reason she's finished, it's sad, but it's true, and is because her husband is profiting off this scheme, basically. So what needs to happen is Congress needs to look at what happened in the 1980s and say, look, we got to close this loophole both ways. So if a company wants to aggregate all these losses and buy a profitable company, they're restricted in the amount of losses they can deduct each year, let's say 5%. What that'll do is it'll slow down all these takeovers, slow down the mergers, and that'll stabilize the economy because too many jobs are being lost to takeovers. In addition, in the banking sector, if you read or you watch the Citigroup video, you'll come to understand the problem in the banking sector is not the mortgage issue. That's huge, okay. The real problem is that these banks have committed to do all these leveraged buyouts. So they have all these junk bonds they can't get off their books. And that's why they don't have any money to lend, because they're stuffed to the gills with these junk bonds because they've been making huge fees working with these hedge funds and private equity firms. And the game is simple. It's likely that these hedge funds aren't paying any tax on the revenues from the subprime loans. Imagine if someone makes a proposal to you, hey, why don't Citigroup, for example, why don't we sell you this portfolio of subprime loans and you can make 9% on, and since you have these big tax deductions, since you're a hedge fund or private equity firm, you won't pay a dime of tax. You get tax-free income. Okay, so that's the way. That's what's happening right now, and so the solution's real simple. Again, Congress just needs to step up and close the loophole both ways and say if you're generating net operating losses and you buy profitable companies, you can only deduct a certain percent a year. That's it. That's it. That's all. That'll do it. That'll turn around the economy. It'll turn around the banking system, and I believe also it is going to determine that Barack Obama beats Hillary Clinton in a landslide for the Democratic nomination for president. Because when people become aware of this, they're going to realize what needs to happen, and they're going to ask the big question, and that is, President Clinton, why have you not pursued this change? And the reason is obvious. He's making tens of millions of dollars by taking advantage of this loophole. Thank you for listening. Hello again. Some quick references to corroborate my comments. 1, go to the New York Times and punch in Bill Parrish in their archive. You'll see a couple stories. 2, Google financial fraud space Microsoft. If you read that report, it comes down about the 4th reference. You'll understand how tax deductions can be created without incurring an expense, especially with stock options. 3, in my archive at billparish.com, there's a story that I wrote for Barron's, very reputable financial publication, a full-page story on Microsoft, explains more details. Keep in mind when these net operating losses are purchased by the hedge funds and private equity folks, they're only paying pennies on the dollar. It's cheap to buy losses. You maybe get $1 billion worth of losses for only $50 million because you're basically buying a lot of defunct companies. Senator Packwood told me that what I'd done was a tremendous public service, great public service. He confirmed my observations with his colleagues in the Treasury Department and various others. Again, he was chair of the Senate Finance Committee. He knows what he's talking about when it comes to taxes. Steve Dean did a column for the Oregonian, June 22nd, 2004. It's in my archive. It buried in a story related to the Texas Pacific Group's acquisition of PGE, attempted acquisition. There's a press release, PR Newswire issued June 25th, 2004 about this exact topic. And then USA Today did a story on September 15th, 2006 with respect to Bill Clinton and Wild Oats. Just Google Bill Clinton space Wild Oats. And again, I think Clinton was a very effective president. But this is going to come out in the presidential campaign. And Barack Obama would be crazy not to bring this up. This is a defining issue. And it's also an opportunity for Hillary Clinton to deal with it. And my sense is if she doesn't deal with this, it'll be a landslide victory for Obama, because this is an issue that she can't hide from. And it's important for her to address it. And especially given that her daughter is working for a hedge fund. Bill Donaldson was fired as chair of the SEC for forcing registration of hedge funds. I think it was in June of 2006. And that's astonishing. He was fired. He voted with 2 Democratic commissioners because he knew the importance of it. He was a very respected former CEO of a major corporation. So what on earth is your daughter doing working for a hedge fund if you're running for president? So anyway, that would be my comment to Hillary Clinton. Best of luck. Thank you for listening.